All right, folks. I am so thankful to have you here with us and unable to use my words because, of course, we're doing a live taping today and I completely just lost myself for a moment there, but I'm going to bring it back. Gonna bring it back. All right. All right. And we are here today to dive into just to 2024 in general, right? We're going to go deep. We're going to dive in from an astrological perspective, from an Akashic perspective. I have with me Stevie once again. So thankful that you are here. And of course, everyone who is joining us tonight live, which is such a beautiful, fun experience. We've got all of these gorgeous faces, and I am just so thankful for everyone who has chosen to come and spend time with us. And so, Stevie, girl, before we dive into 2024, we've got to take a snapshot, a look back at 2023. I guess my question, like right off the bat, is what for you was the most impactful transit this year?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think that the nodes being in Aries and Libra, and it's tied between that and Saturn and Pisces, those two are really big energies this year. And those only continue into 2024, So next year is a little bit like this year, only different. Same, but different is what I always say. But yeah, I think Saturn in Pisces was definitely very important for all of us. And it will continue to be that way next year as well. Yeah. And I think this year too is like a lot of work on the self. The nodes being in Aries and the South node being in Libra is everything to do with our relationships and who we are in our relationships and understanding ourselves on such a deep level and like owning it too. I love Aries energy when we have the opportunity to have it because for me, it's like, oh, this is just mine. It's not everyone else's. Because if you're like me and you feel everybody else's stuff, like sometimes it's hard to figure out who's yours and what's not yours. And this year specifically has given us a taste of like, no, that's just yours. You can just own that, you know? What about for you?
I would definitely say Saturn and Pisces. I remember the week when that came in.
Yes.
I remember being in my bed for like half a day because Saturn like switched, and then there was one other transit. It was like right around the same time, right? It was like Pluto, right?
Pluto and Aquarius. Yep.
It was a Friday that week, and it was like I had this insane energy that was just pouring down. And for three-fourths of the day, I couldn't leave my bed. It was so intense. That had never happened before. It was a great lesson for me to learn that like I can talk to my guides and say, yo, turn the crown chakra off.
Yeah.
Yeah, dial
Turn it
it
off. Yeah.
down. Something so that I can be a normal human being. But that had never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. That was really intense. Things absolutely shifted when Saturn, made that ingress into um and then again when it went direct in November,
Mhm.
it was like,
Yep.
oh, okay. Right before the eclipse. I think this last eclipse season was just massive. I mean, I feel like every single person, even those who are not necessarily inclined to talk about energy or inclined to talk about feeling like they're going through things, were just, I mean, it was everywhere online. It was huge. It was a big sort of introduction, I believe, to 2024. Just so many things going on. If you were to kind of like encapsulate what you think 2023 was about, I know you kind of briefly touched on it just a little bit, but what do you think like 2023 was?
I think it was like getting really clear with ourselves and giving ourselves permission to become less of the people pleasers and less of the programming that we've all grown up with. Um, and I really do think that like this year we had this big question of like, what is real? What actually is reality? Which is thanks to Saturn and Pisces, because that's up for interpretation depending on your thoughts and what you take in and who you're talking to. And I think there's this big question that's going to continue next year saying like, what is your reality? How are you creating it? How are you becoming a victim of it? How are you taking responsibility for it? Those were really big themes. And I also feel like this year, like you mentioned with the eclipse season, I think honestly, a lot of us were going into ancestral stuff. Like, I feel like even if you didn't know it, you were healing lines and lines and lines of ancestral trauma. And a lot of the souls that are here right now are signed up for that, whether we are aware of it or not, you know. And this eclipse season was like smack in the face. Very intense for healing a lot of ancestral trauma. Again, even if you didn't even realize it.
Yeah,
So
it was brutal.
yeah. And something else too that I loved about this year was that when Jupiter went into Taurus, maybe it's just because I have so many Taurus
Yes.
placements, but
No, it was
as
good.
soon as Jupiter went
It
into
was good.
Taurus, I was like, the trees are alive, you guys. Like, they're actually talking to me, and they're like spirits. Like, I knew that before, but they were like literally talking to me. It was amazing. And just like the nature itself was like, so it's still, you know, Jupiter's still in Taurus. Like, it was just, it's so alive. And like realizing that we can be, we can grow so much and expand so much when we tune into nature, which is like, duh, of course, we always say that, but it just really like hit me in the face. It was so cool.
You know, you can hear something like a million times though until you like feel it.
It's embodiment in Taurus.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's in my tissues. I can actually feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Akashic theme for 2023 was empowering the self. And the way that I saw it, especially like in my own personal life, and also like through the eyes of a lot of my clients as well, it was a year that kind of brought us to our knees in a lot of ways and invited us into saying, this is what I want. This is who I am.
Yeah.
This is like that, a deeper realization of the fact that we are the creators of our life, that our responsibility and taking responsibility for ourselves and our actions and our life is everything. Our experience is 100% up to us. And I think that that really came forward this year in so many different ways. And it came through, I think, in a lot of like, and a lot of painful situations, you know, a lot of like shakeups, you know. Um, and I think it was needed because, you know, and the Akashic Records said throughout the year in the monthly forecast, it was like they kept asking this question: who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Right. And I feel like this year we were realizing, like, oh, I can write that story for myself. I can create that person. This isn't just a figment of my imagination. This isn't just me like admiring someone else and being like, oh, this person's whatever. No, I can write that story for myself. I can experience those things too.
100%. Yes.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Um,
And something else
so
too, just really quick. I just want
yeah.
to, whoever's listening and all of our live peeps, like, don't forget to look back, because sometimes, at least I do this. I'm like, what even happened this year? You know, like the reflection that we're going into with Mercury, he's going retrograde for the end of the year, and so we get this moment to like breathe and slow down if we choose so. But you guys have done so much work. I know it. Like, so much work. Maybe not a lot happened externally, but so much happened internally. You know, my clients like went through huge leaps. Like,
Yeah.
incredible. So just like taking a moment, I know I always need this reminder to be like, hey, look at all the stuff you did. And like pat yourself on the back, and you know that you were brave enough to like go through that. And because it did, it like it brought us to our knees a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
And we felt a
Yeah.
lot of things really physically, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my birthday's, you know, it's at the end of November. And so this time of year is a very reflective time for me anyway. But this year, especially right around my birthday, and even since then, like I've just been filled with this excitement, honestly, about this year and about how incredible this year has been and how much it has made me a better person, a stronger person, a kinder person. You know, it's been an amazing year, and it has not been easy. Like not even a little bit. But this was like right on the tail end of all of that ecliptic Saturn energy of, you know, that it was like, oh, once all of that I mean, for me, it was like earth shaking stuff was happening for me in the midst of, this last eclipse. Um, and as soon as I came up for air, it was like almost looking back and just being like, wow, I made it through that. This is amazing.
Cheers.
Yes. Yes. So, and definitely please take that time. I completely agree with Stevie to really think about it. I'm going away next week for a retreat, and I will 100% be doing that. We don't take enough time to celebrate ourselves and all that we go through. And I'm really trying to be better about that in my own life. So thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, we definitely needed to talk about that for sure. Um, okay, is there anything else about 2023 you kind of want to hit on before we dive into 2024?
No, I think I mean, a lot happened this year, but I think a lot is going to continue to happen in 2024 that will make even more sense. You know what I mean?
I
So
do.
you get it.
I do. Here we go.
Yep.
Stevie and I had this conversation. We were like, so how do you like show up? And they're like, this is the most intense year. And then, whoa, 2025 is going to be on the other end of it. And then that's
Yep.
going to like, that's going to be a whole nother level.
Yes, exactly.
We'll be saying the same thing because yeah, 2025 is going to be insane. Okay. 2024. Let's start with our theme. So you and I sat down and put our heads together, both from an astrological, like the themes that you're seeing, the themes that I'm seeing through the Akasha. And we came up with this beautiful theme for 2024, redefining yourself. And I'd love for you to talk about it, Stevie, from your perspective, like why this aligns for 2024.
Yeah. What a cool thing though. Like when you said that, it like I felt it. I'm like, I can do that. Like every day we can do that. I don't know, like I know when you move, you can be like, I could be a totally different person. It's like just like that fresh start. So the north and south nodes in astrology really point us at like where the collective is heading and what's the karma they're sweeping up or like facing, letting go of, dealing with. So the north node is more like where we're headed, and the south node tends to be more of the shadow. So all year next year, the nodes are still going to be in North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra. And so we're still very, very much going to be working on relationships. Like, how do we relate to another person? Um, but even bigger than that, like, how do we find harmony and balance within ourselves? Because, like, we're a new version of ourselves. 2024, you're going to be a new version of yourself, which means that what used to be is no longer going to be, especially when it comes to relating with other people. So, like, massively, Libra's shadow is people pleasing and like trying to harmonize somebody else or take responsibility for somebody else when it's not your business to do that. It's not what's best for you. You end up being resentful. So, it's going to mean that you're going to probably end and begin relationships as you grow and evolve and step more into who you are, because you do get to redefine that next year. It's going to continue. And usually the second year of the nodes being in one area means that this is integration. Like this year was like, oh, we're learning, and oh, look at that. Look what's happening. Oh, look who I am. And next year it's more like, okay, now I'm going to own it and embody it and integrate it into my life. So you're still going to be learning about yourself a lot next year, and you get to define it. Like that whole Saturn and Pisces things, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is like you get to make the story, you know, like there's nothing holding you back. We literally are the creators of our reality. So we get to like re-begin, which is so exciting, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I know like when we spoke about it, like defining was the first word that came forward for me. But then in thinking about it more, it was like, no, we're redefining
Yeah.
ourselves, because 2023 has helped us to see so much more. It's like we were all just kind of going about our lives, doing our things, pre-pandemic. And of course, the pandemic put a major stop, a major break on all of it. And since we've been coming out of all of that, it's been like one layer, one layer, one layer coming off more and more. not only for ourselves and how we look at ourselves and how we view ourselves, but also the world around us. You know, like we can't put our head in the sand anymore. We can't pretend that like, oh, okay, there's a war going on over there, it's not a big deal. Like we're not capable of doing that anymore. And it's a really beautiful thing because it's helping us to evolve in that process of that discomfort of that, like, wait a minute, that's not right. That's not okay. I don't agree with that, you know? Um, and so it is very much this redefining. It's like, okay, now that we've kind of gotten a picture, like a more clear picture, and of course we'll continue doing that in 2024, but now we have kind of come into more realization of our power in that process. And so now how are we going to start rewriting it a bit? You know, like how are we going to start working with ourselves? And to me, it seems like a very important journey with self this year again. You know, 2023 was a big beginning, I think. And then this year, I think, is going to be huge. And I know, I mean, the mantra for this podcast is when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits, you know? And so the work that we're doing, it's going to leak into our family lines. It's going to affect, you know, the people that come into contact with us through work, at the gas station, you know what I mean? And our friends, like in every way. And not that we need to be out there preaching. That's not what it's about. It's just like energetically, as we continue healing and changing on the inside, it's going to start changing things around us. And that's our work, I think, in 2024.
And I think that's the most important spiritual work there is the inner work. Like if we all turned inward, the
Yeah.
whole planet would shift really quickly. So, and that's the thing I think, like, just to describe the Aries archetype, which is where we're working through, you know, Aries is the warrior and it like fights for love. And it's totally the individual spark from God, you know, it's not we are all one. It's like this is me. This is my perception of being in a human body in this experience. I'm going to own it. And Aries is it's the bravest archetype. It is not afraid to move forward. It's not afraid to start without even having any of the plans, you know? Like I'm an Aries rising and I'm always the person I drive my husband crazy because I'm just like, let's just go, let's just do it. We'll figure it out as we go. And he's like, no, 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 we gotta like no, no, no. Aries does not care. Like get on the train or get off. I don't care. I'm going, you know? So Aries, like there's this invitation to be really brave with yourself this year and experiment because Aries is also not afraid to like try something and then be like, nah, I'm not going to finish that. It's totally fine. No one says, except for society, that you have to finish everything you start. So like this year is such a good year to like experiment and try some things and like you redefining means like you don't have to, you can, it's movable. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a journey. So we all get to be like this fiery, brave pioneer this year, which is like really exciting because it means that we get to figure out who we are. And it's an amazing year to, you know, invest in yourself, like you were saying, like work with other people, get the help that you need, the healing that you need, study whatever is intriguing to you to learn about yourself. Like this is a great year to do that.
Yeah. What are some shadow aspects do you think that could come up from like redefining yourself?
So the shadow of Libra Aries is definitely war because these things that we've like shoved away that we're not confronting are gonna like, hey, look at this disharmony is coming to the surface. So you're gonna see that obviously like in the collective war with yourself.
Yeah.
Um, this means that there's a lot of boundary work to be had, which means your relationships, you know, when you do boundary work and the other person isn't used to it, sometimes they get really upset at you and that feels really uncomfortable. So it might be one of those years where you have to like speak your truth. And I know when like even when the moon hits Aries for me, I'm so much more willing and braver to say the thing that's really hard for me to say. I'm shaking while I'm doing it, but it's easier for me to say it. So that's something too. Like I think we'll be braver to say what we need to say and put boundaries up as we're like really realizing who we are. So that can be really rocky. That can mean that relationships end, you know, or you stop harmonizing or people pleasing or like trying to balance energy when it's not for you. So we'll have to wobble. We will
Yeah.
all be wobbling. And that the cool part about this too is that like as you redefine yourself and figure out your boundaries, you're going to meet other people. Like new energies are going to come into your life, which is cool. Like cuz who knows what that will be like.
Yeah.
New relationships.
Yeah. It feels like learning to use our voice in different ways as well. And I think the important thing to understand there, and this is often something I not only see within my own life, but see with clients, it's like when we start being able to express ourselves or share those things or talk about the difficult topics, like it's going to be really hard at first and we might do a really poor job of it, but that's okay. It's going to feel good just getting those things out there and just speaking, from your heart, trying to get more aligned with that. Like it's almost like it's like a muscle that you haven't worked out, for a really long time, and like it's going to feel weird and it might hurt, and um but kind of the more you keep showing up for it, um I think it's also like this whole redefining yourself. It really has a lot to do about like our own path and our own journey, and like how that, like letting other people do theirs. I know one of the themes, one of like the sub themes that the Akasha talked about for this year, is being more open when it comes to others, letting people freaking do what people are going to do, when they talk about, um, like, let's see, like us always getting into the business of others, having opinions about what other people should be doing, having judgments about what other people should be doing with their lives, and pulling that back to ourselves. In the midst of redefining ourselves, we can't expect other people around us to also be doing that work, because we're all in different places and we really need to respect where other people are at and trust that they're in the perfect place for them. They're going to get to where they need to go, just like we're going to do. And keeping that view, on ourselves, instead of like, oh, this person, oh, that person. Because of course, I mean, so much more polarity is going, like polarized thinking. It's going to rise in the collective, I think, in a very big way in the midst of this redefining ourselves, because everybody's going to be talking and everybody's going to, be under that Aries, like, no, 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 I know what's, um, and it's fine to share your opinions, but letting people just be, I just think is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that Q2, that will become easier for us.
Good.
Yes. I think Jupiter will be helping us with that, actually. Yeah.
Bring me some Jupiter. I'm here
Yep.
for it. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and like dive into the quarters. So let's look at our first quarter and just kind of, you know, what do you see from an astrological perspective happening there?
There's a lot that goes on first quarter. I'm going to say it's the loudest quarter. Which is so interesting that we start the year with Mercury retrograde, because as of the 2nd, I believe he will be moving direct. And he usually takes a hot minute to like get going again. So the first part of the year is going to feel kind of like sludgy, just as the last part of the year is. But it'll start to pick up really quickly. I just want to say, like, this is the last year that Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces. This is the last year that those two signs are going to be in water. And this is the last year that Uranus is going to be in Taurus. So we have massive endings this year. Like that's another theme too, is like this is an ending year and a beginning year, and we're going to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, which I've literally been saying this since 2021 because that's the energy that is. But when you have two planets like Saturn and Pisces, and I know we talked about this briefly, like he really, really is asking us to work on our inner work, the subconscious, the unconscious, our past lifetimes, our traumas, our healing, our spiritual selves. This is like Pisces is very much the archetype that holds it all. And so Saturn comes there and tries to structureize this like we are all one energy, which means that we have to do the inner work if we actually believe that and we want that to be our reality. So this is a very Neptune and Saturn and Pisces, that archetype is very, very empathetic, very compassionate. it can be very delusional. We're all really being asked to like how we're deluding ourselves, how we're playing the victim, and that will continue. Um, but the cool part about these two energies is that you can take your dreams and literally make them a reality. You can structurize your ideas. You can really work on your intuition. You can be totally in devotion to your spiritual practices, and you will need to be. These tools are going to be really, really important this year. But it's just really interesting that this 2024, we have 3 major planets ending their cycles. And 2025, which we won't get into, is a whole different energy. So this is kind of like the sweeping up and then the beginnings of some new things. So there'll be some new energy and integrating the old stuff. And when you're at the end of a cycle in astrology, it means that again, you're embodying it, you're integrating it, you're understanding it, you're putting it to work. So that's something that's really important just to say overall too.
I have a question before you kind of dive in just a little bit deeper. So I know that like, especially on Saturn transits, I feel like when you go through a Saturn transit, which is not easy, right? But it's like you see the benefits at the end of that transit if you have, accepted the invitation of whatever it's been wanting to bring you through. So then can we look forward to also seeing, a lot of benefits and gifts coming out of these endings this year?
100%. 100%. If you've been like taking responsibility for yourself, your energy, your spiritual practices,
Yeah.
your just everything, just taking responsibility for your healing. The Saturn is like, he gets a bad rap, right? Because he knocks on our door and like totally squishes us into being like, doesn't this suck? It's like, suffer. Remember these karmic points you signed up for? Like, now's the time that, but we signed up for them, like taking that as a mantra. Like, I signed up for this. This was my contract. I'm always going to attract what I signed up for. And then when we choose that belief, he rewards us with cookies and gold stars. And like, he's so rewarding, and without structure, we'd just be floating around in space. And that doesn't work when you're in the 3D world. So
No.
Saturn really like, this is the year where you will reap the benefits.
Yeah.
And you will be rewarded for the work, the karmic work that you're choosing to do. And with Saturn, it's like, if you chose this karmic moment, right, this relationship or whatever, and you choose to avoid it, he's only going to get louder, because that's what you want him to do. That's what you signed up for. So when you realize that he's knocking, you're like, okay, I get it. This is like what I need to be doing. This is the work I need to be doing. And I don't mean like physically doing. Maybe sometimes it's just like spiritual, emotional, whatever it may be. Then you have this foundation that's really strong for yourself, which we really need that. So yes, that's a great question. I think that this year you will start to see the rewards and benefits of creating the foundations you have been working on.
Yeah. And the Akasha has been talking about, for the last 2 years, anyone who's been paying attention to the podcast, building the importance of building that solid foundation for yourself. Like, what are those things? What is your solid foundation? What is it made of? What are those practices that you can return to? Those people that you can lean on? Like, what is your solid foundation? And I know that, like, from an Akashic perspective, in the midst of talking about all of the intensity, all of the big shifts and changes that we're walking into this year, there's so much place for expansion and growth and just like, all out winning and they spoke about this specifically, like people who've been doing their work are greatly going to benefit this year. It's going to be the difference between walking through these energies and being able to thrive in the midst of them versus suffering, and getting pulled down. And of course that suffering, we can transmute that, right? But those of us who've been doing the work, we're going to be able to handle all of the upheaval that's going to be happening. So yeah, that very much aligns.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point, because it also speaks to the fact that we're doing this work not just for ourselves. Like Pisces is, we are all one. You know what I mean? So like, okay, I create a foundation. Do you want to come join me on my foundation? I'll help you. Like, it's got some good structures in it. You can benefit from it. So that means we're also going to be like working with other people. And I think another thing that we can get to in a moment is like, this year, if you haven't fully stepped into your gifts, or you kind of been like working on it and you're not feeling that brave about it, like you're going to be initiated into it. There's going to be a call where you're like, it's time, you know?
Yeah. In the midst of that redefining, you know,
Exactly.
I feel like it's happening so much too. I know, like with my clients and in my groups, like people are feeling more confident to say, like, I'm a channel
Yeah.
or I'm a psychic or I'm, you know, like being able to even like start playing with some labels that they would have like never dared to
Yes.
use before.
Yes.
And yeah, it gets me all kinds of excited.
Me too. Me too. And something else too, just the last thing I'll say about this is like we've been learning discernment, you know, like when to pull your sword out, when to
Yeah.
honor your intuition and your energy, because the Piscean archetype is very intuitive. So it means that your intuition's probably for everyone. And your feelers and your empathy has also kind of been on crack. That's Pisces. It's intense. So, you know, using discernment for like, is this feel okay for me? Is this, do I need to go back into my hidey hole? Do I need some more solitude? Because Pisces gets overwhelmed. And so collectively, when you have planets there, everyone's overwhelmed. Everyone's overstimulated. That's why Neptune stationing is like so intense, because he's in Pisces. So we have to use discernment to when to like pull away and like plug in our batteries alone, you know, which I think everyone's going to need to do that next year too. Like go
Big
take the
time.
bath and close the door.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What else is happening first quarter?
So for first quarter, we have the first thing is that Pluto is moving into Aquarius on January 20th. So
Mm,
like I said, we start the year slow. Then on the 20th, we have this shift into Aquarian energy. And we had this in 2023 for a moment in the spring into the summer. But we get a longer stint. So from January 20th to September 1st, Pluto will be in Aquarius. And he moves back into Aquarius on the 19th of November. So he's more in Aquarius than he is in Capricorn this year. So what that means for everyone is this is really a huge step into the age of Aquarius that everyone talks about. But when Pluto first joins a new archetype, when he starts to open that door, we see the shadow. So for example, 2008, he moved into Capricorn. Capricorn is systems and structures and economy and authority, and we had a crash, right? That was just one thing externally. So you see the shadow of him because he has to show us the shadow in order to transform it and alchemize it, because Pluto is the planet of alchemy. So he will show us the shadow of Aquarius, which means, you know, Aquarius is like power to the people, unity consciousness, what's best for the group. Um, it's innovative, it's galactic energy, it's like really, it's what, how do we best use our brains and our intellect to work on what's best for the group, right? So Aquarius energy is community. And when you have Pluto moving into there, he's going to show us, and we already know this, you know, like we already know that we're we don't have what's best for the collective. We're not in unity consciousness totally. We're under the authorities. Like we're not set up as a society to work in this way. So when Pluto comes to Aquarius, like he does in January, you are going to see that louder. That means people are going to stand up more. It means that we're going to use our innovative ways of thinking to create structures and systems that no longer are like top down. It's like group. So it means that more AI, more technology, most likely technology to help heal the earth will come like blazing in. Aquarius is like gonna do the weird stuff, you know, it's like not afraid to do the thing that hasn't been done before. So it's really exciting, but it also makes me a little nervous because it means that there's going to be upheaval, which again is necessary, right, in order for us to come back into more of a unity consciousness. And Pluto in Capricorn has really shown us where we give our authority away.
yeah.
That's what we've been learning for since 2008. Like, oh, look at all the places in my life that I've chosen to not be my own inner authority. So we'll be dancing between these two all year long, which means closing up, collapsing structures and systems, still talking about who's the authority and who's not of my own life, and then moving into this new energy where we're all going to like care more, honestly. And it's going to show us where the people don't have the power, which again, we know this, but it's going to be louder for sure.
Well, I feel like we've been learning it this year more than ever before. And again, it's like it's been that like layer per layer getting removed, of being like, wow, this is how they're going to play that. Wow, these are the decisions they're making.
Yep.
We're seeing it. We can't look away anymore. And you know, we want to, but we can't. We can't forget what we've seen. So I think it's a perfect segue right into Pluto and Aquarius.
Yep.
And I know like AI just absolutely exploded when Pluto was in Aquarius, for the brief time that it was this year as well.
Yep. Yeah. Who knows what we're going to see? I'm pretty excited about it. I like that kind of stuff, but I know some people are nervous because the shadow of that is definitely like giving our power away to technology.
Yeah,
But again, we're the creators of our reality, so I don't like to give that any any energy. Um, but yeah, we're
100%.
definitely gonna realize that like we actually can do a lot together. And that, like community living, like you're gonna see more people moving towards working in community together, living in community together. I imagine a lot of people are going to be moving next year to try to figure out like who are the people I want to be in my community, or getting more involved in a cause or stuff like that. That's going to be really cool. The other shadow of Aquarius though is that you lose Leo, which is you lose the individual self. So that's going to be something we're figuring out. Like, how do we do what's best for the group without losing our individual expression? Which we saw that in the pandemic too. So,
Yeah. And I think that that's where I know, again, one of the big sub themes in the Akashic reading for 2024 is self-care,
yeah.
and really taking care of ourselves and not the bubble baths. And I mean, like, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with the bubble bath. But I mean, more so like learning how to take care of ourselves again first so that we actually can show up for others. Like, really seeing how in our life we are giving away our power to other people. We are putting other people first. We are divvying out our energy in ways that aren't serving us. You know what I mean? Like getting very real about that so that we can actually take care of ourselves, because the way that the Akasha talks about it is there's just going to be so much noise. There's going to be so much going on. They say it almost repeatedly at different intervals throughout. And I know whenever they're repeating themselves, it's because like, pay attention, right? But if we don't take care of ourselves in the middle of all of that stuff, then of course we're just going to, blend into other people. We will completely absorb ourselves in other people's opinions and ways of viewing the world. Again, going back to that solid foundation, the need for it.
Yeah. And like being really careful with what you're taking in. That's going to be something that's really important. Like,
Huge.
what are you watching? Who are you talking to? What are you reading?
Yeah.
Like that becomes your reality. And I know that's such a basic spiritual principle, but like discernment
It's
around that,
massive.
it's so big, so big. Like, turn it off, close it down. Like, I think that just from that lens too, something I always talk about is like our nervous system, like really caring for our nervous system, whatever that looks like for you, because this year is going to be overstimulating.
Oh yeah. Oh
100.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think energetic sovereignty, and this is, something I've already been preaching for the past several months, but energetic sovereignty being like, I mean, more important than the food we eat, more important than the way we exercise our body, taking care of our mind, like energetic hygiene is massive.
Yes.
Folks who don't have a daily energetic routine practice are really gonna struggle. You cannot walk out into the world, especially in 2024, wide
Wide
open
open.
and not have your system crashed. It's going to be intense.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we've got Pluto going into Aquarius. What other big, loud, noisy stuff? I don't want to get too lost in the fourth quarter, but I do know it's the biggest
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's the biggest one. I'm just gonna like make general terms so that we don't have to go into each and everything. And that's more of like in our toolkit. If you guys want the toolkit, we go into like all of it, like dates and when and all of it. So
Yeah.
um Pisces season and Aquarius season, right? These are there's a lot happening. There's a lot of triggers in these two seasons. So the first part of the year essentially is what we're talking about with your nervous system is going to be really, really important, because anytime you have a planet shift, like if you think about the planets, now this is basic, but I always do this, like they're energy bodies, we're energy bodies, right? And they're beaming down a specific archetype energy to us. And then when they move, it's like everyone's like, whoa, like what I was saying, when Jupiter moved into Taurus, I was like, oh my God, the trees, they're talking. Like when we have planets move, everyone in the collective feels it, whether they know why or not.
Yeah.
And the first initial, like you said, you couldn't get out of bed, like that's going to be a thing. Um, so just really, really paying attention to your body, honoring your body, honoring the information you're taking in because it affects your body. But we have on February 19th, we have Chiron meet up with the North Node in Aries. And this is what I was speaking about earlier, where people are going to be called to step up as the healer. Like, look, you've done so much work. You've read so many things. Okay, maybe you haven't been certified in something, but like your experience matters and you need to help other people. They need you. So there's this deep call to step into the healer that you are. And Chiron is also the wounded. So this is going to be a triggering time for people. This is going to be like, let's just say February to keep it general. You will have people come into your lives that really are important, like karmic contract, soul turn on, like, hello, pay attention. Like, this is where you're going to be walking down a path and you're like, no, you need to take a right. It's time to take a right for your own healing, maybe for someone else's healing. But this is a moment where your soul, the North Node is like where our soul is like, hello, I need to move in this direction. So Chiron, wounded healer, soul's, purpose, these two come together and all kinds of things can happen. It's not necessarily like, oh, the most triggering thing in the world, but we're going to see the Aries archetype come out here, which is like, be brave, be bold, do the thing that's most important for you. It might be hard on your relationships during this period of time. You might really step into all the healing that you've done and start helping other people. It really could work in so many different ways, but that's a really big month for healing, for helping, for being triggered, for your relationships, for learning who you are, and whenever I'm triggered, I'm always like, oh, thank you, I needed that, because clearly there's something going on that like needs attention. So this will be a big theme in especially in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the month for Valentine's then.
No, I'm pretty sure Pluto and Mars meet up on Valentine's Day. So no.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I've never been a fan anyway. It's all good.
It'll be good for, movement in some ways in relationship. Yeah.
All right. Where do we go from here?
So that's really like Q1 has, like we were talking about, I think it's going to start out slow and then start really like picking up. And then February is pretty fiery. And then like just in Q2 is really where we have a big disruption. But I'm going to say Q1 spicy. Let's use that word. That's what tattoo artists say when something hurts. They're like, oh yeah, it's a spicy spot. You're like, no, it's way more than spicy.
We're going to talk about that.
But yeah, Q1 is fiery and triggering. And when Mars is involved and Pluto, it's like things are going to kind of like, I don't want to say explode, but there's definitely some explosive, fiery energy during them. It's going to be we're going to need to pull out our tools.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like really the first sort of big sub theme that the Akasha dove into, which is, and they talked about it multiple times throughout as well,
Yeah.
self-care and nervous system being a huge part of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But like you get to be just to like, put the silver lining on this. Like you can be really brave and bold and like grab onto a lot of strength.
Well, here's the whole deal. I mean, why I love forecasting, why I love astrology forecasting, like I would rather know like there's some big stuff coming up so that I can get my mind in a better place and I can realize, okay, this is coming. So what do I need to do? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to step into curiosity? Do I need to maybe have a discussion with someone I'm living with to be like, we need to like maybe tiptoe around each other? Like, this is information to empower. It's definitely not to cause fear, because there's no need to there's no need to feel fear in the midst of this. We're in like one of the most exciting times, if not the most exciting time on the planet right now. Like we've got front row seats to some big ish.
Yeah.
Um, so there is the reality of the situation, sort of the gravity of it, I should say, but also on the other side, these things are happening because so much has been out of control for so long.
Yep.
So we're riding the ship, and that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and we chose to, right? Like we,
Oh
our
yeah.
souls, the people that are here now are like, oh yeah, let's do this. Like,
Yeah.
let's change some stuff. Yeah.
So moving into second quarter, where you talked about a big something.
So this is when on April 20th, we have Jupiter and Uranus meeting up in Taurus. So this happens every 12 years. It's not like, oh my God, once in a lifetime. However, it hasn't happened since I believe 1941 in Taurus.
Mm.
Um, so let me just describe the two planets and then I'll describe Taurus and then you can piece it together like a blender. And something else too in the toolkit, we talk about this specific transit is so big in 2024 that you will have some tools to help you figure out where in your life this is going down. So that's helpful to know, like, okay, well, relationships, or it's in my home, or it's in my career. So Jupiter is the great expander. He gives us the vision. He's like the bird's eye view. He wants us to have everything. He's big, right? I call him Santa Claus because he brings abundance and expansion and a lot. But when he comes up to another planet, he basically makes them bigger. So he's already the biggest planet aside from the sun, and he expands things. So you have his energy, right? He's growth, he's abundance, but he can be a little bit overdone. Like if you have too much Jupiter, you can be really blunt, or you can be really like a lot. Um, Uranus's energy is very electrical, and he is the great disruptor. And so he really, really wants us to live in our own authenticity. So he's going to come into your life, and if you had a Uranian transit or you have a lot of Uranus energy in your chart, you know him well. He comes and lightning bolts us. And sometimes it takes one day. Like he doesn't care. He's not like this long transformative Pluto energy that takes 3 years to like really peel the onion layers. He will take you in a day and just like shock you, right? But what's on the other side of that is a more authentic version of yourself, more truth, and more of like what you're here to do. So I always think of him as like one of our higher selves. But again, he doesn't care how long or what. And he's the great disruptor. He's unexpected. So every astrologer will be like, expect the unexpected with Uranus, because you can't really guess what's going to happen. So don't try. However, what comes after that is really you living more in your truth. So again, biggest planet, right? Really intense, like big expander meets this very electrical disruption energy. That means change 100%. Like everyone's going to change in 2024 in one way or another, in a big way. So then you have Taurus, and Taurus is Mother Earth, our economy, what makes us feel safe, our money, our values. So everyone is going to change what they value in some way, shape, or form. Everyone is going to have to really be faced with, is this really what makes you feel secure? Are you sure? And in Taurus, like a lot of astrologers are saying, like the economy is something is going to go down in the end of April. And again, this actually isn't the end of April. Let me back up and just say, like, when two planets, outer planets, come together, it's not just like on that day. It's the weeks and months leading up to it. So maybe March, maybe April, we'll start feeling this, maybe before if you're sensitive. But something is going to change in your life to create a new sense of security and authenticity for you. And I really do think that like this could be a really big moment for our economy, or the structures that have kept us safe. And I'm saying that in air quotes because Taurus will do whatever it can to stay in what's comfortable, even though it is not what's best for it. It's like, oh, but I have roots here, and it's just it's fine. It's just fine. It's just because it's what you know. And so if you have a disruption planet coming to that archetype, it means that like what has made you feel comfortable and fine is no longer going to be okay. And it's not authentic anyway. It's not for your best. You're just doing it because you're comfortable there, and it's safe. So we're all going to be pushed out of our comfort zones, I think. But again, with these two planets have our best interest at heart. And so what comes from this is a change that is more authentic. But I don't know exactly what's going to happen because it's Uranus and he's like, good luck trying to guess, you know?
Yeah. I'm personally excited for this. It's hitting a happy place in my chart. So I'm excited. But I think collectively, like when it talks, like when we think about the economy, um, you know, they've been talking for, well, astrologers have been talking for a couple of years now about what's coming for us. And, nobody can really like name it. Nobody really knows exactly what it is or how severe or, whatever it's going to be. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting. Okay. April.
Interesting. April, the only other thing, well, not the only, but the major thing happening in quarter 2 is that Jupiter will be changing signs into Gemini on May 26th, until June of 2025. So he moves out from talking in the trees, right? That's Jupiter and Taurus, where he's in that very expansive earth energy into Gemini. And this is what we were talking about earlier about, I think it's going to be easier for people to accept different perspectives
Hmm.
because the Gemini archetype has everything to do with curiosity, collecting information, facts. Like it's not attached to the other side of Gemini is Sagittarius, which is the shadow of that would be like, oh, you're right and I'm wrong. You're wrong and I'm right. This is the right way to view things. It's like the cancel culture energy, where Gemini is like, oh, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm just like curious. So Jupiter in Taurus is going to be a lot of information coming at us, for our own expansion and our own experience, like to open up to different perspectives, which I love that. I think our culture needs that so desperately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my hesitation there is like the shadow side of Gemini. I feel like can just, ooh.
Ooh.
And with like in Jupiter, like, all
Yeah.
right.
I mean, this is like a lot of people are going to be writing, a lot of people are going to be talking, communicating, learning.
A lot.
Everyone's going to want to learn spiritual stuff, I think, because Jupiter is a very spiritual planet, you know. He is like the philosopher. So these are going to become more normal conversations, but with this is like, be really careful during this, from essentially from May, the end of May on, because this is where overstimulation happens. Like Gemini is like the library where you go in, you're like, where everyone's talking at once and you're like, this is too much information, which we're already living in that age, right? So it's going to be again discernment with what information you're taking in, because a lot's going to be coming at you.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, when I first channeled through the 2024 overview for the year, it was, and I share this with you, the biggest word that was coming through was discernment. And when I think of Gemini, that's what I think of is discernment, because Gemini can also be very surface and can also just talk just for the sake of it and just say things for the sake of it. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about Gemini people necessarily. I'm just talking about this energy, this archetype, and it'll say things without any sort of depth, or truth. Even it'll say whatever the heck it wants to. It's not afraid to be like, I am whatever, when it's like the opposite of that. And so I think discernment, I mean, from what I've seen in the Akasha, and just again, all of this energy, all these things are happening. This is the grounded part of this that we really need to ride with throughout this year. And the Akasha even talked about it, I think 2 months ago in the monthly forecast about how coming into 2024, we're going to be seeing a lot of charlatans within the spiritual community, a lot of teachers who are not necessarily grounded, a lot of like, and it's not just the spiritual community, it's like in all of the industries, right? But like we need to really pay attention to, okay, the news is saying this. Is this real? Do we trust this news source? Where are we getting our news? Who are we hearing these things from? I mean, just every area of our life really being discerning, because that Gemini energy, man, you could just like get swept up in it and then you don't even know what's going on,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you have to discern like what's your truth? What is it? Because it's interesting, right? Gemini will have an experience or collect some data, and then their truth changes, which is true for everyone, right? The shadow of like staying in that is that Your truth's never going to change as you're collecting information or having different conversations or different perspectives. So
Yeah.
it's going to help us do that, but it's going to be really important. Again, I always say this, I'm such a broken record, but like getting into your body to figure out what is your truth.
Yeah.
Because it's not, this is very mental,
Yeah.
like a lot of
Hugely.
fire, a lot of air. That's like really mental energy. It's like coming back into the heart is your heart-centered practices and coming into your body, like somatic practices, whatever those are for you, huge, huge. Because then you'll know, like, okay, that's not for me. Moving
Yeah.
on.
Well, and I mean, for folks who don't necessarily know what we're talking about, or maybe don't have those tools, like you can jump online. These are such big topics now. There are tons of people sharing all kinds of different tools and practices. I mean, just unlimited. So just Google. I'm telling you, so many will come up. There's lots of videos on YouTube. And then it really comes down to you as a personal person, what works for you, because it's going to be different for each and every one of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big one. All right, kicking it into Q3.
So Q3, the only thing I'm gonna mention is that in on the solstice, which is December 21st of 2020, we had a new Jupiter Saturn cycle. I don't know if you guys remember when everyone was like, the Christmas star was coming together. That was Jupiter and Saturn. And they started to get closer and closer and closer in the sky until they met up and kissed. And that started a brand new cycle. So it's important, but we have our opening square in August. So the end of the year is when a square in astrology is tension. So you have this 20-year cycle, right? It started in 2020, and then it goes to its first square, then it goes to its opposition, then it goes to its closing square, then it comes back and meets anew again. So this opening square means that the cycle we started in 2020 in December, we get another taste. It's different this time, right? Like it's never the same because everything's moving, but this one specifically is a tension between our expansion and our contraction. So Saturn is the push and the squeeze, and Jupiter is the expansion. And so this is like an accordion kind of energy where they're like tugging at each other. And this is Gemini, right? And Pisces. So everything we've already been talking about, this is it. Like discernment, boundaries, getting into your practices. Like this is where we're all collectively, and Jupiter and Saturn are collective planets. So social planets, meaning like where they are is like really what's externally and socially what we all experience together as a group. So socially speaking, I think there's going to be some tension, which also means, and we already all know this, like the election's going to be messy, which I know is like Q4. But this is really where we start to really feel this like push and pull energy between old and new, and what you said and what they said, and truth and knowledge. And it's going to be a lot. And again, this is going to be where you go want to ask yourself, what is my reality? How am I feeding it? What information am I taking in? What are my practices? How am I creating that foundation? And again, the squares in astrology get a bad rap, but they're really meant to create change. So that's what we're going to see from this. 2024 is a year of change.
Yeah.
And maybe even if you didn't want it, it's still going to be there.
Oh yeah.
Ready
No,
or not.
we straight up lost the short, like it's here, folks.
Yep.
You can either ride the wave or you can be drowned.
Yes.
Be picked up, thrown around. Yeah.
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 That's
And that
huge.
really like leads us into Q4. Like there isn't any major transits happening. There is eclipse season during that period of time too, which are those are portals that we go through, but we have them every year,
Yeah.
But the end of the year is going to be this real big tension,
Yeah.
especially collectively.
I know. So let's dive into Q4, and I definitely want to talk about the time around the election. And for folks listening, the toolkit that we're creating, we've not only done overviews for the whole year that are really nicely broken down with resources, but we're also going to be uploading new resources every quarter so that you have updated information throughout the year as well. That'll be new and fresh, both directly from the Akasha and from an astrological perspective as well. I'm very curious to sit down and channel about the election time, but I'd love to know, just a little bit more about what you're seeing there from a astrological perspective. And it feels like, I think you mentioned this maybe at the beginning, but just kind of energetically, what I feel into is like the last quarter. It's kind of like the calm before storm in a way, before 2025. And not that it's necessarily going to be calm, just like it's like that before, you know? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the thing about the election, and I haven't pulled the chart, but in the toolkit, we will, like you said, we'll give more resources with specifics. I kind of have a feeling that there's going to be a retrograde, but I'm not sure exactly. But anyways, that is when Pluto will be at the last degree of Capricorn for the last time for 248 years. So he shifts into Aquarius for the finally for the next 20 years on November 19th. And what's the election, like the third or something, right? What is it
oh
usually?
gosh, I don't know. I
I don't
think
know.
I'm sure someone in the chat does.
Yes. So this is like from my own personal intuition is like I don't even know if there's going to be one because it's going to be so messy.
Mm,
And I don't know if society even wants one anyway. Maybe that's just me saying that. I don't know. But because the
yeah,
systems
the
and structures
fifth.
don't work, right? Like so, and when you have a planet at the last degree of a sign, it's this very frantic energy. It's like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, we don't have much time. We gotta finish. It's like that like pressure to like get your exam in 5 minutes. Like it's that kind of energy.
yeah.
So Capricorn is systems and structures, authoritarian energy, foundations, and Pluto is at the last degree, and he's the one that burns shit down, excuse my French, so that it can be rebirthed again. He's the phoenix that rises from the ashes. So I imagine around this time it's going to feel like that. Like everyone saying like it's done, like we're done with this crap. um so it's going to be interesting, let's say. I'm not really sure exactly because I haven't looked at the specifics of November, but I do know that we'll be in that really tense energy and that Pluto will then be moving into Aquarius weeks later for the final time. So even the months leading up to that, like the quarter four is going to carry this 29 degrees Capricorn energy, which is the last structures crumbling in that archetype. So it's going to be interesting.
Gonna be really big. I love Pluto. I love Pluto transits, but they are not for you know, the faint of heart.
No.
I was gonna say like the weak of knees or something. I don't even know where that was coming from. I mean, it was my Pluto, my Pluto squared Pluto that, shifted my entire life from marketing CEO to spiritual guide. I love Pluto, but it was not easy. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you like in wrapping up 2024, how are you feeling into it?
I'm super excited, but maybe I'm just really hopeful. I know I came here to like watch this stuff crumble and watch a whole new thing be rebirthed. So I'm super excited for the role that I get to play in that. And I really, really love Uranian energy and I really love Jupiter energy. So they're coming together. That's like, while it might be kind of shocking for us because that means such big change. It means that on the other side of that, like we're living more authentically and for the better. And I know that like we all need the motivation to come together collectively to make change. And we have that power. And I think that this year is going to show us that.
Yeah.
And then it comes from that Aries archetype, which is the self, right? When you take responsibility for your own foundations and your own care, like that everything can shift. So I'm super excited and a little nervous because I'm a human. What about
Yeah.
you? How are you feeling about it?
I mean, I think that this is what we signed up for. This is what we're here. I feel very empowered after this year personally. And I have been very empowered by seeing other people step into their power this year and really taking their own, life by the reins. And I think that, with 2024, I feel like the more intentional we are about how we move through it, the easier it's going to be for us. Being in that flow, going in that rhythm, understanding kind of what's going on around us is going to be really helpful. So for folks, like if you have astrologers or spiritual guides or whatever the case may be, like leaning on these folks if you need them, but also really stepping into your own personal practices this year, because every one of us has such a deep well of wisdom within us. It's our ultimate truth, and nobody's going to know better for you than yourself, period. And so learning how to connect with yourself, spending time with your intuition, time with your spiritual practice is going to be massive this year. And I mean, I love a challenge. I'm here for it, especially because I also see this power of, like you said, like the Uranus and the Jupiter. I mean, that's honestly, like when I think of 2024, that's the energy that I think of 2024 as. It's like anything's possible, baby.
It's electrical. It's exciting.
Yeah. But, right, you got the Saturn who's like, but you got to build a spiritual foundation, but you got to, you got to take care of yourself. Like you got to like be discerning. Like these are the things that are going to keep you grounded in the midst of it, because there is going to be so much noise happening around us.
Yeah.
And I know within my own work, my big goal is to help people stay focused, because we're all out here. We're not going to be able to be as useful as we can be,
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So just kind of like winding down here, what would your greatest advice for 2024 be? I feel like we've like given advice like throughout the entire thing, but
can't help it, right? We're like, let's keep and don't forget
and do this, make sure.
Okay, it's gonna be the same thing that I said, but I'm just gonna say it again because I need to hear it. Maybe like get into your body every day. And so just to give you an example of how I do it, in case you want to like do it how I do it, or just to give you a example, when I wake up in the morning, I go outside. I don't care what the weather is. I put my bare feet on the ground. I will stare into the sun's direction with bare naked eyes, no contacts, glasses, for 3 minutes and just breathe. And I swear to you, those days that I do that, everything changes. And I won't go into the nerdy scientific details of why that is, but it totally pulls you back into your body, into your nervous system. And then I also like, some days I need to move my body. Some days I need to take a shower. Some days I need to just pray. Some days I need to listen to music and like shake everything out, like just really asking yourself, what do you need physically so that you can be more of yourself? Like that's my advice. And that's what helps me. And if I don't do that, I am a freaking mess.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the thing is like, there's all of these ideas and tools that are available online for grounding, but the truth is it's the most mundane things, I think, that really ground us. I mean, me cleaning my house, doing my dishes, keeping my house clean, like these things keep me so grounded. They keep me centered, and really calm. Doing things with your hands, I think, is huge. There's so many ways, and it's different for all of us, but, I couldn't agree more in that caring for our body and being embodied is just going to be massive. So, I mean, that's, that is having a solid foundation when we're embodied.
Truly.
Embodied.
It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to do yoga for an hour and a half and meditate for 2 hours. Like, stop it. You don't have to do that.
You don't have to.
I mean, I went through that where I was like, I'm the worst. I'm like, no, it could be so simple,
Yeah. I feel like the more spiritual I get, the more human I get. Yep. Right.
Cheers to that. Amen.
All right, Stevie. Well, thank you so much for being here and just coming and sharing for 2024. Folks who have been tuning in, please know that I will be doing a whole episode just on the 2024 Akashic forecast and really diving in deep there. So be sure to join me for that one. But thank you so much for being here, Stevie. Really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. It's such a pleasure. Love talking to you always.
Love talking to you. Now I have a plan. All right, folks, thank you so much for being here, being with us. Don't forget to join the email list, do all the things. And remember, when you invest in yourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.